I'm sure when you read this, we've all been in this situation, I would guess. Maybe not recently with everything that's been going on with the coronavirus, but certainly most of us want to travel. And I've said this many times. I really want to travel, and my bank account has responded with the same thing, like to the backyard. Financial wellness is in chapter 9, the topic, and it's one that is interesting to me. I actually went to school and have an economics degree as one of my minors, and I also used to work in student financial services. So I used to work with a lot of college students who had financial questions, who dealt with financial issues. And so I'm going to add a few things in here and there that maybe aren't in the notes and maybe don't really pertain to everyone, but there'll be enough of you that a couple of these things do pertain to you. So we'll get started and we'll get through these fairly quickly. This isn't a huge chapter, but there's one thing for sure: financial wellness and this balance wheel. Here we know that financial wellness has an impact, just like all of these are intermingled in some way. There's no doubt that money can be, or lack of, or the need for money can be something that affects us in a lot of ways. Can affect our physical, can affect our mental, can affect our social, so forth and so on. So money is a big part of it, and finances is a big part of it. And so financial wellness has a place for sure. In this chapter, we will try to hit on these areas, mostly talking about basically money management and credit scores and some things like that, but we'll hit on a few other things as well. So, what is financial wellness? Well, financial wellness is really your ability to live within your means, your ability to live within your means financially and pay for what your needs and, in some cases, your wants. Being financially responsible or living up to your financial obligations is important, and because it can add added stress to your life, and as we've learned in previous chapters, stress has an effect on a lot of areas. We'll talk about a planned budget. We'll get into this here a little bit. So, financial wellness. Sometimes money is hard to talk about. Sometimes for people, money is a taboo subject. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to have anything that become where money becomes a problem. Maybe that's because in the past, maybe their parents argued about money. We do know that money is a significant reason for divorce in a lot of families. We know that money and the lack of money has an effect on people. We also know that those that have a lot of money can have negative effects as well. For college students, there's some common mistakes that are made by college students. First and foremost, college students tend to not budget. And so you tend to buy items you don't necessarily need. Some college students will get credit cards. Many of you that are taking this class probably have some kind of a student loan, and I'll touch a little bit about student loans and the debt that you're getting with those later on in this talk as well. College students tend to sometimes don't stay very organized with paying their bills, and so you have late payments, and anytime you have late payments, then that's difficult to deal with, because then you have more money that's due. Maybe you overdraw your bank account because you're not paying attention to how much money's in there. Maybe mom and dad are continually watching your bank account, and so you are not. And so you're actually not learning any financial responsibility at the current time because mom or dad's taking care of it. That's a mistake. That is a problem. So when we look at credit and someone's credit score, what we're talking about is, what is your financial trustworthiness? In other words, if you're going to be given a loan, or someone's going to, as simple as you go and buy your first home and you need a loan for the home, or even if you don't and you go to buy, or I'm sorry, to go and rent an apartment, they're still going to check your credit score. I know from personal experience, as I have a college, as my students know, that I have a daughter that's in college, so I have a college student in my home that I talk with often. She has gone and rented a home with a couple of her friends in college, and of course, they ran a credit check. She doesn't have any credit. Why? Because she's 21 years old and she hasn't had any reason to have credit. Yes, she's paid some bills. Yes, there's a few things that she's done when she lived in the previous apartment, where she paid the electric bill and she paid a few other things, but she doesn't have enough history. And that's the biggest part of a credit score, is history. What have you done with your money over a period of time? And so when we look at this slide, it says good credit. Your history of payments, employment, salary makes you a good candidate for a loan. Yes, if you have employment. Yes, if you make money. Yes, if you make good money. And yes, if you've paid all your bills in the past, your credit will be good if you have worked with a creditor. A creditor is someone who loans you money. Someone who loans you money, such as a bank or lending institution, they're going to give you lower payments and so forth if you have good credit. If you have bad credit because you've made late payments, or you've borrowed too much money, or you have credit cards that are way too high in debt, and you have missed a payment here or there, whatever it might be, but bad credit will stick with you. And it is difficult to get out of bad credit. So credit scoring is a system that creditors use. There's three main places where they get the credit score, and I'll give you those in a little bit. But the biggest thing to remember when you look at your credit score and you think about your credit score, is that it's based upon, for most of you, loans or payments that you've had. Now, maybe some of you have had an auto loan that's in your name that you've paid. Therefore, when you pay that auto loan off, it will improve your credit score. For some of you, maybe you have credit cards, and so you pay those credit cards, and therefore it has a credit score. But that credit score is important, and it's something that will follow you throughout your life, and it's something that's used quite often, from everything to determining whether you need to pay down a deposit when you first get cable in your home, to whether or not you get your home loan. So when you have a credit score, you have to, or when you're thinking about your credit score, you have to think of a few things. First of all, in order to have a credit score, like I said, you have to have some sort of debt or some sort of payment that you've been on that allows you to see, or allows a creditor to see, past history. Also important is the amount of money you make. If you have a job and you can show that you make a certain level of income, you don't necessarily even need to have a credit score yet. So if you're someone who plans to get a really high-paying job out of college, all right, maybe you'll be all right. Maybe you won't need a credit to show any past history of payments. But for most of us, that first job's not going to pay enough for us to be in that situation. So here's some things you can do. Make sure you get a credit report every year to see exactly where you stand. This slide says get a major credit card. You're all going to need a major credit card at some point in time. I would advise against getting a credit card in college. There's no need for one in college unless you are traveling, perhaps, or maybe you feel you need it in case of emergencies. But again, there's no need to have a major credit card while in college. I think some of it will depend on your own individual situation, whether you are someone who takes care of yourself or whether you still have parents that are helping you out. All that would be a factor in getting a credit card. But if you can avoid getting a credit card, then avoid it. But most important, just get one card. Don't get multiple credit cards. You don't need multiple credit cards. Just get one. And put restrictions on it. You can have a credit card company put restrictions on how much you're allowed to spend in a day. You can arrange for automatic payments. That's always helpful. That makes sure that you get payments in on time. If you have debt on a credit card or you have debt in any form, pay it down when you can. If you're someone who has student loan debt and you actually make enough money during the summer that you don't need it throughout the school year or something, and you can pay down some of that student debt, make payments on it. The faster and more often you make payments, the faster and more often you'll find that your credit score is improved and your debt's lowered. They talk about using 10% of available credit that's for you. So if you have a credit card, you only use 10% of what's on that card. That's certainly part of it. You do have to use your credit cards if you have them. If you don't use them at all and they just sit there, then that's not necessarily a great thing. Now, many of you may find that when you go to look for credit cards, you can look for certain kinds of cards that benefit maybe travel that you want to take or something else. We'll get more into that later. When you talk about credit cards, a couple of things. Use them carefully, choose them carefully. Pay as much as you can, minimize the charges, pay on time, protect your credit card numbers, don't let anybody have them. Probably important to know, and not something we necessarily talk about all the time, but one thing that's important to know is the truth in lending. These are federal laws that are in place to protect young people and to protect people who don't have credit history, and also people that find themselves in credit card trouble.